Okay, so we're going to get started with exercise 222, but I also handed out assignment 204, which piggybacks on what we're doing today anyway. So we'll go through assignment 204 first. It's not due until the very end of April, so 4/29. You've got a couple weeks to work on it. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating two light fixtures. One is an interior light fixture, the other is an exterior light fixture. The purpose of which is to use in your artist's retreat. So the idea being you're doubling up a little bit and that you'll be able to use these light fixtures. You will also post them as a block. That being said, there should be two posts for your assignment 204, one for each light fixture. Okay? And you need to do a daytime rendering of the light fixture and a nighttime rendering of the light fixture. That'll show me the materials of what it looks like in the daytime, and it'll prove that you understand lighting and how the lights work. So over the next two class periods, we're going to talk a lot about lighting so that we can get our kind of initial lighting stuff out of the way. Lighting is one of the more fun things to do in VRay, but it's also one of the more, for lack of a better term, pain in the ass things to deal with. So we will explore both the good and the bad of them, but at the same time, that's where you can create some really great looking renderings. And so it takes a little bit of getting used to in terms of how these things work. I have prepared a 3DM file for you to download that looks like this, that you'll be able to download. I mean, you could make this yourself. It's nothing particularly fancy. This is what we're dealing with today. It's a wall and a roof so that we could attach a light fixture or put a light fixture somewhere in the roof, the wall, on the floor, etc. And this is just when it renders. It's probably going to look like a complete black box to you guys, but it's kind of a nighttime scene. It's dark. When we put the lights in, we'll make sure that they work. That's available on the course website. If you go to today's exercise, about halfway down the page, it's right there. Sample night environment, right? So you can try that out. But before we even worry about the nighttime environment, we actually have to build some light fixtures. And so I'm going to start with a recessed light fixture. This is what I usually start with because I think it's a good kind of base thing to understand how to do. So I'm going to do a recessed can light. And I normally do a 6-inch can light, and since I normally do a 6-inch can light, I'm going to do something smaller. I'm going to do a little tiny 3-inch one. But again, it's entirely up to you in terms of what light fixtures you create. You have a very open-ended exercise today. You're going to be creating these light fixtures. It's whatever looks interesting to you. If you're really struggling to come up with what a light fixture should look like, go online and look for examples and model based on what somebody else has created. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a recessed light fixture. And so since I'm building just the block, I'm going to work right at the origin, even though ultimately it's going to go in the ceiling. I'm going to do it right on the ground. And I'm going to create a few guides to work with. So we'll start at 0.00. And of the diameter of the circle, I told you I wanted a 3-inch. So we're doing a little tiny one. And then let's do an offset of maybe 3/4 of an inch, something like that. There we go. It doesn't look too bad. So when I do this, I'm going to go ahead and create, under the pre-made objects, I can create right here a tube. So we'll do that, and I'm going to use this as a guideline. So the base of the tube, let's snap to my center here. There. The outside is going to be right there. Inside will be right there. And then we'll give it a little thickness, maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 inches, something like that. Right, so it's a little tiny piece of trim. And since that trim actually sticks down, I'd rather move this down that 1/8 of an inch. So let's go from there. Oh, come on. We just move vertical, negative 0.1, oops. 0.125. There we go. It would help if I actually moved it down, wouldn't it? There. That's the direction it's supposed to go. Alright, so it's down below the surface. That's going to act as a little bit of a trim for me. Now, I can put some geometry up on the inside, but I don't really care so much about that. All I care about is what I'm actually going to see here. So I need a little bit of like a bulb or something that I'm going to look at. So if I looked at this in shaded mode, we could see this a little bit better. Right? Basically, I have the trim. Right? Now I need a little bit of a bulb. Yeah, it's kind of fat trim. Sorry, I don't like it. We're going to start again. It's too ugly. I can't do it. All right, so let's see. Radius is 1.5. Inner radius here. Let's do. No. I'm being very indecisive today. Right? Such is life, right? 1.5. Let's go 1. There, that looks better. All right, negative 0.125. All right, perfect. So I got that little donut. Now I want a little bit of a glass lens. And so what I'd really like to have is I'd like to have a curve that goes so that this is kind of like a half of a light bulb. So I'm going to look at the pre-made objects again, and I'm going to use this one, which is called an ellipsoid. All right, and so we'll do it from the center. That's fine. So let's do an ellipsoid from the center. There it is. It's going to end of first axis. We'll go. Let me turn on quadrant snap here. Oh, it is on. So turn off perpendicular. And jump to quadrant. There we go. There's our first one. There's our second one, and we'll make it go down to there. Right. So you see that I have that little ellipsoid shape. See how it kind of extends down a little bit. Right. I can choose to split that if I wanted to. The truth is I don't really care because this is going to go up inside the wall. It doesn't really matter. If I wanted to, though, I could duplicate an edge, and duplicate that edge, and that edge. Perfect. And we could do a trim, and we could get rid of this upper part of it. Oops. Let's do a split instead. Split this with that. And we can get rid of the top half. All right, just a cleanliness sort of thing. Okay, recognize 0, 0 is still that point that I'm going to ultimately want it to be on. So now I need to set up some layers so that this is organized. Right, so we'll call this can light 3-inch. Right, and then let's go ahead and create some sublayers. We need CL3. I like to put what it is. When you start to get really big nested layers, it's helpful to have some clarity. So we'll say CL3 trim, and we'll say CL3 bulb. Okay, and so this here, this glass, is going to be my bulb. So we're going to change the object layer there. And this one is going to be my trim, so we'll change the object layer there. Okay, so I have my bulb and I have my trim, both established. Okay, now I need to actually bring in the materials. So let's go at materials here, and it's really up to you in terms of what materials you want to go ahead and bring in. Go on my flash drive here, and it would help if I could find what I was looking for. There we go. VRay materials. I think I might do a white porcelain for the trim, so I'll go ahead and bring in a white porcelain, kind of a semi-shiny white trim. And then I'll bring in what's called an emissive material. And so I think I already have one here under special materials. If I don't, we'll have to make it. Nope, I don't have it. So I'm going to create an emissive material. What an emissive material does, and this kind of will cause us to have to take a break and talk about lighting in general. In VRay and in Rhino, there are two types of lights that really matter for what you're creating. You have the physical geometry of the light, so the things that are physical, the materials, the trims, the bulbs, right, the things that you can actually see and touch, right, those have materials and those exist. And then VRay has its light source that's kind of an invisible thing that mimics what light does, right, but you can't actually see it, right, and so it'll make sense when I bring it in. So what we're doing here is we're creating the geometry, the stuff that you can see. And so if we think about a light bulb, we have to have some kind of a material that represents a light bulb, something that glows. And that type of material is called an emissive material. And I think that I have one already loaded on the website here. Let me just see here. If I don't, I'll have to load it up. No, apparently I don't. Okay, so we'll have to make it from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on Scene Materials, and I'm going to say Create Material. And previously we've always done Standard, right? But instead of picking Standard, I'm going to pick... Oh, never mind. I am going to pick Standard. Okay? And then right here, let's rename it for Bulb, right? Because this is going to glow. By the way, there is, if I lose you, if we go to Tutorials, and we go to VRay, and we go right down here somewhere, Emissive Material, it's 8.15. This will walk through exactly what I'm doing. Okay? Okay, so we've just renamed the material. It's called Bulb, right? Then I'm going to right-click on where it says Bulb, and just like we've created reflection layers, etc., we're going to create something called Emissive. Emissive just means it glows. Right? So we'll click on Emissive, and it shows up just like the rest of these layers or drawers over here. So now we need to copy some settings, and these are color settings more than anything. And so it's always good to reference. Before too long, I'll have these memorized, but I always forget each semester what they are. And so we're going to look through here, and this is the critical section right here. The emissive color is going to be 200, 161, and 82. So right here under emissive, I'm going to pick the color. And we're going to type in under RG&B 200, 161, if I can make it type, 161, and 82. And it should be kind of this dingy orangey color, right? That's okay. I know it's ugly, but just bear with me, okay? So we'll go ahead and say okay. All right? Then we'll come back and view the rest here. Transparency at 100, 100, 100. So there's the transparency. We're going to make it at 100, 100, and 100. Okay. Then we'll jump back. Diffuse color is 155, 155, 155. So here's my diffuse color. 155, oops, 55, 155, and 155. Say okay. And last is going to be the transparency of 000. And it's already at 000. Okay, so I have those things. Okay. The one other thing is right here under intensity. And so right now the intensity is at 1.0. Okay. We want to change that. So if I preview it, right, looks kind of ugly. Okay. But if I change this intensity, say to 100, right, and I click preview, it's going to start to glow like a light bulb. And if you look around here on the ground, you probably won't see it as well on your screens, but you can actually see it illuminate the ground around it. So it actually glows a little bit. Okay? So once I have that established, I have bulb and porcelain white. I need to assign those to their correct layers. So let's go ahead and right-click and say assign material to layer. And this is going to be the trim. And this is going to be the bulb. Apply material to layer. Be the trim. Okay, so we have the trim and the bulb. I'll go ahead and close this. And I'm going to get rid of all these extra layers because remember I want it to be as clean as possible when I bring it in as a block. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Good thing somebody's awake today. All right. So now I have those correct. Thank you. Yeah. What? Say it again. Right, and I'm going to do that right now. So, I could just copy it, but when I block it and make it a referenced file, if I have, say, 10 of these, right, and I want to make a change to it, let's say I don't like the trim, I can make the change to the block, and then it'll populate through all of the objects. Okay? So, I have this saved. I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Save. I'm going to save this as a 3DM file. Today is exercise 122. I need a 122 folder. 122. Thank you, it's 222. Can light 3 inch. I'll go ahead and click save. Alright, so now that's been saved. Okay. I could go ahead and render this right now, but it's not going to do a whole lot. Right? It's on a black background. It's just not there. On my version, I can actually see the difference between the bulb. You guys can't see it. But we'll get there. Alright, so I've done that. We can just go ahead and minimize this. And I have the other Rhino file that's open, which is the sample night scene. Okay, so I want this little can to drop right in the center of this wall, or this ceiling. So I'm going to draw a little guide that goes from here to there. And now I'll be able to put it right in the center of this little roof. Okay? So if we look at my layers, all right, I have an infinite plane. All right, I have some scene geometry. Looks like I have some old layers from before. Let's get rid of those. Hold on. Sorry. Blocks. Manager. Come on. I apologize for that. Those are leftovers from last year. So you guys will have those same leftover layers. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import that block. So I'm going to go to Edit, Blocks, Insert Block Instance. And I'm going to pick my can light 3 inch. And it'll come in. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And then I want to make sure I choose this Embed and Link. Okay? So that's checked. I'll go ahead and say OK. And yeah, we can go ahead and replace the existing materials. Okay? And now it's going to let me drop this in somewhere. Right? And in an ideal world, I want it to go right to the midpoint right there. Okay? And so that's a tiny little thing. Right? But there it is. And the way that I drew it, since it all sticks down, I'm not worried about the ceiling intersecting. I can just kind of glue it on the ceiling. That's the advantage of something like this. Okay, so it's there. So if I were to render this, we'd have a nice dark scene. Right? I can actually see a lot more. Right? And we'd have a little glowing light that's in the center. Okay, that's good. But this emissive material by itself is never going to be strong enough or powerful enough to light the scene, to do the actual lighting of the scene. So instead, we need to create what are called VRay lights to do this. Okay? So let me do one other thing. Remember that when you insert a block, it's going to show up on the layer that's current. I always like to move it back so that it's on its own layer. So I'm going to right-click and say Change Object Layer, and that way everything for this 3-inch can light is controlled right there. I can turn it on, turn it off. It's all right there. Okay? So now what I need to do is I need to create the VRay light that's going to represent what this can light is doing. Okay? And so up here in VRay, the VRay tools, we've seen sun, and we've done sun before. But next to it, you've probably seen there's a few other types of lights. You did directional lights way back in the beginning, right? We're going to come here and we're going to create a spotlight. Okay? And so I'll click on spotlight, and I'm going to say, okay, it's going to say base of cone. Where do I want to start the cone? And so for lack of something better, I'm going to start it right here in the center of the same line. And it's going to say, okay, what is the radius, or what is the diameter of this cone? So I'll type D for diameter, and let me just make sure that I do it the way that I'm telling you guys to do it. Perfect. I'm going to do a diameter of 2 feet. Okay, and so that shows up. Now I want the height to be 1 foot. And so in the perspective view, it's kind of hard to do it, but in the front or side view, it'll be really easy to do it. So I'll type 1 foot here. going in that direction. So the 2-to-1 ratio works pretty well. I'll show you what the other ratios do in a second. Okay? So I have the light established. Now, these lights don't work if they're contained inside an object. Okay? It's just the way VRay works. So I actually have to move this lower than where my light is. So I'm going to look at it in side view because I think it's the easiest to move it right here. And I'm going to type move, and I'm going to move this down so that it's just below my light fixture. Right? Doesn't matter how far away it is. It could be right up next to it or it could be down a little bit. It really doesn't matter. Okay? So now when I come back to my render view, there it is. Right? We need to deal with some of the properties of this light. So I'm going to go over here to the properties window, and this is going to show me my standard properties, which you've seen before. But as we come over here, we get an option for light. Okay? And so this is where I'm going to get through the various options associated with a light. And I've outlined some of these, right, in kind of the middle of your handout right here. It's in italics, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to change first the units into something that makes intuitive sense for most people, and that's in radiant power or watts, right? Which basically means light bulb, 40-watt bulb, 60-watt bulb, that kind of thing. Okay? So we're going to then change the intensity. I think I had it set for 40. That's fine. We'll go 40 watts, right? And then on color, we want to adjust the color. Right now it's pure white, right? Which, if we were doing LED lighting, could be pure white, though generally it's shifted slightly yellow, right? Because we're used to seeing it slightly yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and type in some values here. And it's 255, 214, and 170. It's a little bit more yellow tint to it, right? And I'll go ahead and say OK. So now that's been assigned. So I have a color, I have an intensity, and I have a power. The last thing is under decay, we want to do an inverse square decay. All right? Which looks pretty good. Okay? So now that I have that stuff set up, I can go ahead and do a rendering. And instead of having the dark piece showing up, we should actually get a soft light that gives us a little bit of a cone on the wall, right, and illuminates down below. Right? Kind of makes sense? Okay. If you're doing this and you put your light in and you get no light, right, you might have a burnout bulb. And I know it's really weird to say that, but every once in a while, I'd say once every 30 lights that you create, you get a bad bulb and it just won't go on for whatever reason. It's a VRay thing. I don't know. So sometimes you just have to do it, right? Now, I have this and I have my light. The good news is, since they're working, right, I can go ahead and I can create copies of these two together and make more of them. Right? So let's come over here. I'm going to look at it in the top view. Let me go ahead and copy. Right? And I'm going to put one kind of up here against the wall. And then let's take these two and let's copy them. And I'll put one here. Maybe one there, right? And then I could get rid of these originals. So the point is they work when you copy them. And then we can come back to this render, and we can go ahead and render again. Oh, I keep minimizing the render windows. Right? And we get more light against the wall. Okay? So, not too hard to do, right, in terms of setting up something like this. This is what you're going to be working toward. But notice that you need the emissive light so that you see where the light is coming from, right? If I turn off, as an illustration, let me make sure that these are all on their correct layers, right? Those should all be there. If I turn off the can lights, so the can lights are gone, right? And I do the render, the light, the VRay light still exists, but I don't see the source. Okay? So those two things are very, very independent, and it's worth it to get used to how that works and how that operates in VRay. So if I was rendering this room, right, we've got the fluorescent lights that are on in the background. I need something to mimic what they look like, and then I need something to show where the light is actually casting on the object. So we just did a can light, right, and we're able to get that little 3-inch piece. That's kind of the simple one. Now let's try to do some more complicated light fixtures and see how those work. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll open a brand new Rhino, and I like to do new Rhinos rather than opening it, because then I can leave it open in the background, and we'll build something else. All right, so let's instead build a light fixture that goes on the wall, right? And the style of these light fixtures is, again, completely up to you. I'm going to start with a box, and we'll start at 0.00. And I don't know, we'll say this is at, I don't know, let's go 4 inches. And we'll say that this is 8 inches tall, something like that. And let's switch it into shaded mode. We can kind of see it a little bit. Let's move this over 2 inches. Let's move it this way. Oops, should have been 0.25. And again, I'm making this stuff up as I go, so there isn't a right or a wrong here. Let's do cylinder. Do a diameter of 2. Do a height of 3 inches, like that. Move it up. Vertical, maybe 0.25, 0.5. Alright, and let's see here. Let's move this a little closer. No. Vertical, 1 inch. Alright, so I got that. Probably need something that attaches these lights together, so let's see here. Let's create a little rod. Do a diameter of maybe 3/4 of an inch, something like that. Scale 1B because I didn't make it long enough. So that's long enough. Let's move it vertically. Something like that. All right. So you see I'm starting to make something. Okay. So I need a little bit like a glass sleeve or something that goes up. So let's go ahead and go back to my little tube here. Let's go to center. Come on, there we go. There. And that was, I don't know, we'll just do this arbitrary. Like that. I don't know. Sure, why not? Okay, so we have this little light fixture drawn up. Now I need to start again, apply some materials to it. So let's go back to my layers. Right, we'll rename this some kind of wall sconce. And let's see here. This would be the light shade. This would be the housing, for lack of something better. Make them sub-layers. And we'll take all of these and put them on the housing layer. We'll take all of these and put them on this layer. And we'll get rid of the extras. Okay, so now it's a matter of assigning a few materials. And I worked last semester to create a good material for this kind of semi-transparent glass. And I might have to go find it because I don't remember where I put it or whether I uploaded it. Let me look in glass and see if I can find it. It might be the frosted glass. We'll try it and see. Maybe we'll give it a go, right? So let me go ahead and apply material to layer. And then we'll load up something else. I don't know.
To create kind of a like smoky frosted glass, you use marble and then like
Adjust the transparency, yeah. So you're on the right track. All these are just combinations of other things, adjusting transparency and that sort of thing. All right, so let's go ahead and adjust this as well. Change apply material to layer. Say okay. All right, so I have those kind of established. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, because this is kind of going to be a frosted, fluted piece of glass, I'm not overly worried about putting the bulb in it. If this was transparent, then I'd have to put the bulb in it. But I'm not. I'm doing it deliberately as a frosted piece, so I'm not going to worry about an emissive material for this one. So let's go ahead and save this as a 3DM file, and we'll call it wall sconce. All right, then we'll jump back to my sample night scene, and I'm going to put it on the wall back here. Right. So let's go ahead and go to Edit, Blocks, Insert Block Instance. And we'll load in the wall sconce. Okay. Embed and link again, and that lets me go back and fix it if I don't like the materials or what have you. So there it is. I'm going to go ahead and move vertically, right, and we'll move it up in that direction. Now, in this particular example, right, this is not the best light fixture to have a spotlight coming out of it because it's going to glow in all directions rather than in just one direction. So we're going to use a different type of light, and that's something called a point light. And so the point light button is right here. And I'm going to click on point light. It's going to say, where do you want me to put it? And so I'm going to turn on center, and I'm going to drop it right here because I can see that point a little bit easier. Right? I'm ultimately going to move it down so it's halfway down this glass. But while I can still see it, I'm going to click on it so that it's selected and come over to the properties and then go to light. And this is where I'm going to make these adjustments. So same thing. My units are going to be in radiant power. My wattage will start at 40. My color is 255, 216, 170, 70, right? I don't know. I don't remember. 255, 214, 170. 170. I'll go ahead and say OK. Watts inverse square is my shadow type. Right? And then, now that I have that established, I'm going to go ahead and move this down. So let me move vertically down by 4 inches. So it's actually, oops, move vertical 8 inches. I forgot the negative sign. So it's actually down inside this little light fixture. So I don't want these spotlights on because I want to kind of test how this is going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my layers, and usually I'll end up with a layer that's just called lighting. You could call it VRay lights or something like that. And then I like to specify different areas of lights, because if we're selecting lights, it's much easier to select them all and adjust properties. So I'm going to call these can lights, and we'll change the object layer so that they're all on that, which allows me to turn them off, right? I could also create a sublayer here called point light, right? And then I could select the point light. Point lights can be very difficult to select, but that one worked pretty easy. Let me go ahead and change the object layer. All right, so I have the point light, I have my light fixture. These I can leave on, right? And we'll go ahead and do a test render and see how it turns out. Complexity of the materials is adding a little bit to my render time. All right, so we're getting the glow of the light, but we're also getting a little bit of a cone coming out the top because there isn't a cap on top of it, right? So it's mimicking what the light would actually look like. And so it's going to take a little bit of practice to get the settings right, to get your lights looking the way you want it to. But today's really about that experimentation process, right? And I don't know, I'm going to have to zoom in and see how this is this sleeve is working as that semi-transparent. I know I had one that was working really well last semester, and I just forget whether I uploaded it or not. So I'll make sure I get that one out so that you guys can use that as a kind of a semi-transparent frosted glass sort of thing. And so anyway, this is now done. It probably deserves to be rendered a little bit closer in so that I can see and confirm that it works. But the two types of lights that I want you primarily working with for today are spotlights and point lights. Okay. There are other types of lights. There are things called rectangular lights that are really good, but they're much harder to work with. The settings aren't as programmed. These are pretty specific, right? You set the wattage as if it's a bulb, and it's going to work pretty well for you. Okay. Remember that you are going to have dead bulbs occasionally. So if you're saying, why isn't it? It's just blank. I adjust the settings and it's just dark all the time. It's probably the bulb being dead. Okay.
So what do you do in that case?
Delete it and create a new bulb. Right? It's kind of like unscrew the bulb, throw it away, put a new one in, for lack of something better. Right? So anyway, I'm going to turn you loose. You don't need to watch me build any more light fixtures. If you're struggling with how to make something, let's talk about it and kind of work through it. Yeah. Yes, yes. So if I had a mirror in the background, it would show the reflection. That's part of why VRay is as good as it is. So if I had a mirror that was on this wall, it would then reflect what else it's seeing. So. Yes, there are some challenging things. Like if you have a completely contained piece of glass, a lot of times you'll have to bump the light up a lot because it gets trapped inside, and so you have to overcompensate for it. But we'll get into some of those specifics as you create the objects that are hard to make them work. Okay? Any other global questions? Global or? Okay.